Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's June 13, 2025 program, Telling Our Collective Story, Local History Museums. My name is Thomas Hura. I serve as president of City Club, and I'm pleased to welcome you to another of the many forums we've held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club is lucky to be a trusted, open, and independent voice for Eugene area community members to be heard. And as a lifelong Eugenian, I dare say the community is lucky to have the City Club and to hear from our program guests and questions from the audience, whether here in the beautiful Wow Hall, online, or over the radio. We believe these kinds of gatherings around critical community topics strengthen our understanding of one another and ultimately our ability to support the community building work in so many sectors of Eugene. In today's fractured information landscape, we want to be a space where you can participate in unearthing, disseminating, and sharing relevant information in conversation together. We would love for you to browse our past programs at cityclubofelugene.com or YouTube or Facebook. And become a member if you'd like to support our work as the only city club in Oregon that meets weekly. I'm so glad I became a member in 2019 because now my name tag has this cute little acknowledgement of my membership start date. There are many ways to support and collaborate with us, and I'd like to thank our Platinum Community and Diamond sponsors. Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce serves as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information available at www.kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, and act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. Thank you to the City of Eugene and Lane County for their generous support as well. And a special shout out to our most recent Sapphire sponsor, Summit Bank. We're proud to do our banking at Summit, and we're grateful for the contributions of Summit's employees to our club and community. A quick reminder to silence all cell phones in the hall. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to a familiar voice, Andrew Kallick, the immediate past president of City Club and the coordinator of today's program.
Thank you very much, Thomas. How do you tell the story of a place? Why is such history important? What can we do to ensure that everyone's story gets told? For generations, local museums have played an essential role in navigating the complexities, contradictions, and collective triumphs and tragedies of our past. Their job is multifaceted: to educate people of all ages, to ask critical, probing questions, to unlock mysteries buried in stacks of ancient artifacts and diaries, to try to make sense of hundreds of years of human civilization in the place that we now call Oregon. We're joined by leaders from two of our local museums to talk about their work and its importance in a moment where the past is contested and the future uncertain. Keith Losey has been the executive director of the Lane County Historical Museum since February of this year. He's new to Lane County and Eugene, but brings over a decade of museum experience to the role. Keith served as director of the Albany Regional Museum for 7 years, helping it navigate the pandemic and bring significant growth to the organization. Before that, he worked for the Clark County Historical Museum in Vancouver, Washington, and has served as a volunteer at numerous institutions across Washington, Oregon, and Indiana. Maddie McGraw has been the curator of the Springfield Museum since 2018. She grew up in Bend before attending college in Ohio and has worked in small history museums in Ohio, Alaska, and Oregon. She loves the possibilities for community growth that local history museums can generate and is a self-proclaimed artifact nerd. I think you're probably not alone in this crowd, Maddie. Maddie is also on the board of the Laurel Grove Historic Cemetery, has 2 cats and a dog, and loves to adventure around Oregon looking for rocks in her spare time. Please join me in welcoming our panel. And up first is Keith.
All right. Well, Hello, everyone. So yes, I am Keith Losey. I am the executive director over at the Lane County History Museum. I am still pretty new there, and I am pretty nervous about presenting today for a couple of reasons. One being that I am new, and I just don't have all the good anecdotes yet of the local history. And the second is something that I share every time I'm presenting to a group of folks like this. And that is something I shared in my interview process, and I still got hired, is that I'm not a historian. Which is surprising. I've worked at 3 different history museums, spent over a decade doing this, almost 20 years, trying to get into the museums field from the time I started studying it in college to now. But the skills I developed were on the administrative side. I do that pretty well. And when I end up in front of a group of people like this, what I know is that I will do my best, and that if I don't have the answer for you, I will go back to the right people and find out what it is. I share all this just to let you know that I typically get 2 reactions when I present to people and to let them know, or just meeting somebody on the street, that I work in museums. Either they get really excited, or they really don't. For both groups, the assumption is the same, that I am going to turn into a history teacher. I'm going to start spouting off dates and little occurrences that they just are either going to be really happy to hear about or really not. And that latter group doesn't get excited about that is really unfortunate for me. Because I think what museums do, and what I really find interesting, is working with that first group and how passionate they are. Because these stories are worth collecting, they're worth preserving, and they're worth sharing. And so that's what we're out here to do. You know, it might be family genealogy, it might be a local industry like being a Mackenzie River Guide. But whatever it is, those folks that get excited, and it's in these shared stories that we pull together the bigger picture of the community. We work to learn what has shaped us and what our community is and what it could be. So we encourage people to reflect on that as they go through the exhibitions. Museums play a unique role in this space of kind of reflection and sharing our communal stories. Really, anyone can interpret history. Anyone can be a historian if they want to be. You can go out, you can write a blog, you can put on a podcast or a radio show. And if you really want to go deep on it, you can write a book. But the thing that I think that makes museums special, and why you should come visit the Lane County History Museum or any of my contemporaries like the Springfield Museum, are the objects that we work to preserve, to share, to help share and make this history real. So for all that they're inanimate objects, they really truly help bring the stories to life. Everyone has seen the Mona Lisa, right? You've seen it. But have you really seen it? Have you gone to visit it and see it? Many of us have read On the Road by Jack Kerouac. But have you seen this original 120-foot long scroll that it was written on, that he typed out as the story goes, in a 3-week binge of writing? I was fortunate enough to have that experience at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. That scroll went out on display for the first time in decades after it came out of private hands. And that was my kind of aha, and it really gives life to the author's story. And so that inspired me to kind of get into this work, and that's broadly why I think museums are important. So now I'll talk a little bit more about the Lane County History Museum and kind of give you more enticement to come and visit and hang out with me. We were established in 1951 after an agreement was struck with the Lane County Fair Board to add a cinder block building to the fairgrounds. And that would serve as our initial home and still really serves as our home today. It did go through some expansions and changes. It was far too small, even when it was first built. And at the time, we were called the Lane County Pioneer Museum. Donations continued to flow in from families wanting to preserve their heritage. And over time, the museum was expanded to house that growing collection. We had an addition in 1959 to the exterior, which now serves as the front of the museum, with additional space added as a loft space in the 60s, and we've just been located now in that same building at 740 West 13th, right there off of 13th at the fairgrounds, for nearly 75 years. We continue to grow and collect. We're actively working to collect the community's contemporary stories and to expand beyond that pioneer mindset that was the original collection. It's hard work. There is so much to do to get people to come out and see that we're changing and that we're growing our stories and what we share, growing our vision of what makes a community. But we fill it now with stories of the first female sheriff, Esther May Ralph. We have a collection from her that's going on display, or that is on display. We look at the history of the McKenzie River and the McKenzie River drift boats. We have a wonderful drift boat that if you ever get a chance to come out, and we had a great presentation by Wally Larson, who built it in the Helfrich style. That was pioneered here in Lane County. We carry the story of the Mims family house, and we've hosted past exhibitions on the Oregon Country Fair and the Eugene Friends of Farm Workers. We produce newsletters, an annual journal that we humbly call The Historian. And we're working on future events. We have partnerships. With the move for the Eugene Pride to the fairgrounds. We've already met with their leadership. The museum will be open, and we're working on a special exhibition. We've been out, we've had booths at past Prides, and one of the things that we worked to do while we were there were to collect the stories of the people visiting Pride. And so those are things that we want to help highlight to show, again, that what knits this community together and what makes Lane County Lane County. We've funded research in the last year by Dr. David Lewis, foremost expert on the Kalapuya tribes. He is also a tribal member himself, and we are hopeful that in the coming year we'll be able to use that research to put together a very nice exhibit on the Kalapuya. And we are trying to grow what we do in terms of programs. For years now, we've had a great program that we do in partnership with the U of O, where we do a pub talk on the second Monday of the month. I'm looking over at the former director to make sure I'm getting this right. And that runs October to April, so we just wrapped that series up for this last year. And we'll be excited to bring that back, and that helps bring higher levels of history at times to the community, and it helps get our name out there. We have a book talk coming up in July. That'll be on the July 12th at 2. It's the murder of Sheriff W. Withers and other Eugene stories. I've met with somebody recently and I had that reaction of, oh, you work at the History Museum. And I'm like, okay, I bet you like some sort of history. And we talked for a minute, and I figured out, yeah, they like true crime. True crime is history. If you listen to a true crime podcast, you're listening to historical information. So there's always a little something to bring people together. Other things that we do is we're doing a lot of work around, like I said, gathering the objects, but that also has a lot of care that goes into that. We have to be able to prevent them from deteriorating and falling apart. And part of that is seeing how can we help the rest of the county, not just our building and information here in Eugene. And so recently I've been in negotiation with the Junction City Historical Society to take over their 2 museums. And so we'll be expanding our footprint potentially in the next year or so, help preserving the Pitney House and the Dr. Lee House out in Junction City, which will be wonderful. If you ever want to come visit me, we are open Thursday to Saturday, 10 to 6 right now. And then you can also check out our website for more information on other upcoming events and things like that, lchm.org. We have some reasons that you should come check us out because we have some struggles. It may not always be that we're open those hours or in that location. Right now, we're working with the county on the Event Center Master Plan, and we have to put up a fight to make sure that we are being seen, that we're included in that. And I think it's working. They're very good folks over there, and I think it is working. We also have a House bill that recently passed that could cut our funding because we receive most of our funding from transient lodging tax. And just yesterday it passed, and we may lose 50% to all of our funding. So your support, coming out, visiting the museum, showing how important it is to you, becoming a member of the museum and providing that support is huge. It lets me show the county and other folks how important we are, and it just goes to provide direct support to us, either through your treasures or through your time. I think I've taken probably enough time, and I can let Maddie have her say now. But I appreciate you all being here to listen to me, and I look forward to your questions.
Ooh, tough act to follow. So, hi, my name is Maddie McGraw, and I'm the curator of collections and exhibits over at the Springfield History Museum. I see a lot of familiar faces out here today, and I am excited to see unfamiliar faces as well. I'll have boatloads of things to talk at all of you about. And I'm excited to connect with our listeners on the radio and online as well. I have been at the museum for just over 7 years now, and historically the museum started up in 1979. A group of community members had been collecting things on their own since the 1950s related to Springfield's culture and history, a lot of that being the pioneer narrative, because a lot of these folks, that was their grandparents, their great-grandparents. So they were looking to create a collection that was really centered in the voices of Springfield. And in 1981, the museum opened in its current building, which is the old power substation on Main Street in Springfield. And the collection and the building have always been owned by the city, but for a long time it was taken care of by an amazing group of volunteers that were on the History Museum board. And in 2017, they went to the city and asked for help. It was just a really difficult time to be trying to run this museum and make sure that there was staff and deal with the building and try and care for the collections. And at that point, the city made the decision to put the museum underneath the leadership of the library department. And about 7 months after that is when I joined. And it was an amazing decision. I think it was a tough decision for a lot of folks. Giving away that authority was something that I'm proud every day that the board did. And it allows me to be able to do so much work with my compatriots at the library, which is amazing. We have the same missions. Now we officially have the same mission, but starting out, our missions were, helping people understand themselves, helping people understand their community, helping people learn. That's the basis of any good museum, library, any, collecting institution. And so we were able to see, we're doing the same work. Let's join together and do it together. And so we've made a lot of strides in the last few years that I've been there. And we're officially fully one department now. We have our own fully joined strategic plan, and our new mission. We had some everything in the kitchen sink kind of missions before, and we have really winnowed down. We have a 2-page strategic plan that is really focused on community engagement and caring for and sharing our collections. And our mission statement is Discover, Connect, Grow. And for me, those are things that everyone can do in any museum. They can do, in any institution. They can do it in any library. And it's my joy to be able to help people do that. So, spoiler alert, I'm also not a historian. And I think if you sit down and talk to any of the other museum people in your life, you'll find that out about a lot of them. Historians are extremely important, and I'm lucky every day that I get to work with them and to support them. And after a while, especially working at a small history museum, you become a historian, not necessarily by choice. But I consider myself more, I'm the steward of these artifacts and these stories and these histories for the people of Springfield. The collection belongs to the people of Springfield and rural Eastern Lane County, and I'm there to protect those things and to share them to the best of our abilities. And so we do that in a few different ways. We have a little bit smaller collection than LCHM. I'm not sure what your numbers are at, but we're at about probably 15,000 artifacts. And those span all the way back from donations from 1979 up to our most recent donation was yesterday. So we're an active collecting institution. We have everything from logging equipment down to minute, tiny photographs and everything in between, archives, photographs, everything that you could possibly think of. And all of these items share those stories. And so that's our main focus in everything we do with collecting, everything we do with education, everything we do with programming. We want to share these stories. We want to make sure that people know their own history and are proud of it and know all of the different varying good, bad, and ugly levels of it. And we get to share that with our visitors, which is also amazing. So we have a really great location right on Main Street, so we get a lot of people who are just wandering around and they see, oh, they've got a free bathroom. I'll go in there. And, luckily our bathroom is all the way in the back of the building, so they have to learn something on their way over there. And we've been trying a lot for the last, at least during my tenure, to become a trusted community resource and a trusted place for these tough conversations about our own cultures, our own roles in what we want our communities to look like and feel like. We want those conversations to be able to happen in our museum space. And we want to be able to facilitate those conversations outside of our museum spaces through exhibits and sharing our artifacts with people. We're lucky enough to receive LSTA funding through the state library for the last couple of years to have a part-time collections tech. So we now have myself plus 1.5 person who I share with the library, and then we also have a collections tech, so little tiny staff, a lot of stuff. But through having this collections tech position, we were able to switch our catalog to a different system and now be able to share our items digitally online. So at this point, you can see our entire photo collection online, so over 6,000 photographs from all different time periods of Springfield and rural East Lane County. We went from having nothing available online, having everything you had to come and either email me or see me. It was a direct, you had to know what you were looking for to be able to access anything in the museum. To now, you can search, you can find your own stories, you can find your own narratives, and we've been so excited to be able to give that power back to the community. I'm not the historian. I'm here to help and support and nurture all of the current and future historians in the community. And so we've been working towards that over the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the other things that I'm the most proud of with our institution is a project that we've started called Illumination. And there are a few people in this room right now who have been involved in that in the past. And the seeds of that came from similar conversations that Keith has had with his team of, we've got this collection that really shares it was put together by specific people to share specific stories and specific time periods of Springfield. And really it was, early Main Street, late pioneer period, that creation of Springfield, and what does that look like? And there's not a lot of stuff in between that. And so we have, all of these diverse stories that have come together through Springfield, but we don't have that necessarily reflected in our collections. So how do we fix that? How do we work towards doing that in an authentic way that isn't just me, bashing down the doors of every community organization and being like, give me your stories, give me your stuff, without having built that trust first. So what we decided to do, and this was back in 2020, we decided to use our budget and support story collection teams from different communities throughout Springfield. And through supporting those collection teams, they went out into their communities and talked to people that they had already lifelong connections with and interviewed and photographed them, and then brought those materials back to the museum. And that usually culminates in an exhibit along with some other programming. And then all of those items go into our permanent collection so that they'll be protected and shared with people in the future. So we've worked with the local Latinx and Mexican American communities the local Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities, the local Black and African American communities, and this last year we worked with the local Indigenous Alaska Native community. And so we went from a collection that pre-2020, we had 2 photographs of Black individuals in our collection, and neither of those folks had names attached to those. So we had 2 unidentified people of color. Today we have over, I think at this point, over 35 different people from all of these different communities reflected in the collection, and we have their names, we have their stories, we have what their impact was on Springfield, and that's going to be in the collection in perpetuity, forever. So that has been an extremely validating part of this process, was being able to do that and do that similar work of making sure that we are reflecting all of the diverse parts of what makes Springfield such an awesome place to be and what makes it what it is today. You know, we wouldn't have our amazing downtown without all of these folks. We wouldn't have our amazing school districts without all of these folks. We wouldn't have what pulls us into Springfield without all of the different people that have added to that over the last 10,000 years. And it's been tough sometimes. We're working with a very limited budget, which will probably be more limited in the future. We are entirely funded through the transient lodging tax through the city. So we will be having conversations about what that looks like in the future. I am lucky enough to be a union represented employee. Woo, go unions. So we have more stability as an institution than I think at any point in the past. So that's really good for Springfield and for the artifacts that we maintain and collect and interpret. And we're in a place where we can advocate not only for ourselves, but advocate for the other communities within our purview. So up the Mackenzie River, up the Marcola Valley area, in the Mohawk Valley, down towards Jasper. All of these different places had connections with Springfield in the past, deep connections. And so we highlight those stories as well and support those communities in telling their stories. And yeah, I mean, every day it's a new struggle. Every day it's a new, what the heck am I gonna be doing today? Here's what I've outlined of things to do. I know I'm not gonna do them. Who knows where I'll end up? Maybe I'll join the Laurel Grove Cemetery Board today. Who knows? I did do that. And, every day is different, but every day our team starts out with a shared goal of what stories are we gonna protect and tell today. And I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done to get to that point. And I am so ready for the work that we have planned and everything that we're gonna be doing in the future. So if you haven't stopped by our museum, we are free admission to everyone for all of our exhibits and programs. We're on the corner of 6th and Main Street in downtown Springfield, lovely historic downtown Springfield. And we're right next to the library, we're right next to City Hall, and we're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we want every age group in there. We have some 5-year-old regulars that are some of our biggest stakeholders right now and telling me what they want to see in exhibits and what they want to see in our kids area. So we want everyone to come in and just have your own experience of what local history means to you. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is, part of our work is what we like to think of as windows and mirrors. So it's important to be able to see yourself reflected, whether it's in our collections or in our conversations or in whatever aspects that you find yourself reflected. That is extremely important. But also we need to have windows. You need to be able to see what else is happening with all of the different parts of Springfield, and also the impacts that national and international historical events have had on Springfield and vice versa. So every time we're planning anything, we try and think of that windows and mirrors aspect, and how are we giving people the power to see themselves reflected, but also giving them that moment to be able to learn about people and experiences outside of themselves. So, and we have a free restroom, so very important downtown. So, yeah, I think that's about all I have. So, thank you for having me. Let's get the real stuff started.
Speaking of free restrooms, we're going to take a quick break. Thank you all so much. We'll begin our Q&A in just a moment, but first a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station KLCC FM 89.7 for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. For those listening at home or in the car right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning in to City Club on KLCC, and we're truly honored to have you. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC as well as on our YouTube channel and as podcasts. I challenge you all to think of some great questions. We'll take a short break before returning to get them answered. Thank you.
thing on? So that's digitization is like a general term that we use for when we're like scanning photographs and archives and documents and other things like that. And it's an amazing thing for two reasons. First, it allows us, digitization is a huge part of preservation because, as we know, no matter how well we care for the originals, they are still going to degrade over time. And this way, we're capturing an image of what that item is in person, and we're able to keep that image without having to constantly go back to the original. And so it allows us to better protect the original by creating this copy. But then the other amazing thing is that it allows us to be able to share it with anyone around the world. People can go onto both of our websites and see huge chunks of our image collections and be able to do that work themselves and research and learn. I think for us, so digitization is, it's a long process. Each of those scans, each individual scan can take 30 seconds to a minute or longer. And then that's on top of the time that it would take to find the item, to figure out, is the catalog record up to date? What information do we have on this item? So for each individual photo, it might be a 10 to 15 minute process or more. And, multiply that by, in our own collection, over 6,000. So it's a huge, ongoing, just enormous project. But the value that's in it makes it so worthwhile. That's our history right there. That's our visual history of what our communities have looked like over the years and all the people that have been in them. So it's something that sometimes it's staggering to think of, trying to make the time and the energy for that, but it's so worthwhile.
I mean, you already said it all, but no, excellent job on that. We also are doing digitization projects. We have a constant ongoing one. We have a dedicated volunteer that comes in and works on just one particular collection, the Don Hunter collection. He's in multiple times a week working for hours, moving along, and he has focused, it's decades of photographs, tens of thousands of photographs that he is scanning. And there's only a fraction of them up on the website. And I would just emphasize the great thing about digitization outside of the preservation element, which is huge. And I think that's the hardest thing for the public to grasp, is how much preservation work goes into museums that you just don't get to see. You don't get to see all of that. And there's so many objects and materials. You see a fraction of what we have available because we try to put it on display to give each story its own due and its own light. And so with all of those images being stored back there, you don't have access to them unless we do something like a digitization process. And so that access and using technology like that to let people sort through it, because no matter how long I stay with Lane County, no matter how long I was with Albany, I never knew a fraction of what was in the collection. And with the technology and the ability to add keyword searches to the database that those digitized photos get added to, it makes it so much easier for all of you as individual historians to go in and find what you're wanting to find and help pull those forward for what you care about. So, yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Margaret Conover, and I'm a City Club member. Before I retired and moved to Eugene, I was the director of a history museum, and I am also not a historian. In my work, one of the most challenging things, saddest things really, was to turn down a donation of a treasure from a family. And we had a collections policy, and we had limited space. And I was wondering if you could talk about that process as it plays out for you guys.
Yeah, I know for me at least, it's probably a weekly conversation that I have with, as I said, we get donations all the time. I think at this point in the year, in just this, since January, we've had, I think, 13 accepted donations. And so that could be anywhere from one item up to 1,000 items. And We also have very limited space, and so we have to think of in terms of what can we fit in the museum, and also with our limited capacity and limited staff, what can we properly take care of? We don't want to take in something that we wouldn't be able to care for. You know, if it's something that needs to be refrigerated all the time or needs to have like a certain extra level of care, I don't feel like I can promise to someone that we can give that care for forever for this item at this point. As our institution grows, you know, that's one of the main things that I advocate for, is that we need more space and we need more staff capacity to be able to continue to care for items. And so sharing that story is really important of, you know, what goes into like preservation, kind of the hidden work that happens in the museums. And, you know, a lot of times I'm guilty of, I send them to you guys. So like you know, we have a very limited scope of what we collect. So it's items that can really tie back to Springfield and rural East Lane County and the history here. So if I get somebody who's got something, you know, really cool that's really much more focused on Eugene, I'm gonna send them to you guys. But then also, like, that's another important part about being connected with other museums around the country and thinking about the field in general, because those are other institutions that you can reach out to with those treasures. You know, hey, this doesn't fit our scope, but let's try and have a conversation and figure out where this could go.
Yeah, just to follow that, scope is always kind of the first question that comes to mind. So and then I also receive phone calls. You know, I'll be sitting at the museum on a Monday when we're closed to the public, and I'm getting phone calls about, you know, somebody has some old newspapers that they really want to give us, or an organ, or so many different things. And so, yeah, that's the first question is, okay, well, how does it relate to Lane County? What story are we able to preserve if we preserve this object? So it gets back to what I was talking about. How can we make that story more real and memorable to the people that come and visit us if we have it in the collection? And then second to that, once we determine that, we look at, you know, what is it exactly? What would the care be? Because, yeah, you don't want to take in something that you can't care for. And the condition of it, if it needs restoration or anything like that, all goes into consideration, because it's just, there's limited resources. We're nonprofits. We only have so much time and attention that we can give things, so many resources that we can provide to individual objects. I don't have a great story from here in Lane County, but we took in a flight suit in Albany that was a part of that belonged to the founder of Albany's airport. It's an amazing piece. The three boxes to help store all of it, each individual box to make sure that it was acid-free and in good condition, was $10,000 a piece. And so it's a wonderful piece, and I'm so glad we were able to take it in and we were able to get grant funding to make sure it's preserved correctly there. But that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with that as I mentioned, yeah, on the back end, you don't see a lot of that. It's interesting to me, it's fun for me, but not necessarily for the general public. What you guys like to see typically is all the really cool stories that we're able to share in the panels and the bright flashy stuff, not plain blue boxes.
Coincidentally, City Club has archives of our own, and they're still looking for a home. So if any of you know, a good spot to have 35 years of archives now, let us know. Lanny, you're next.
Thank you. I'm Lanny Ball with City Club, and this is very good for me. I'm an Uber Lyft driver, and I know a lot of stuff, interesting stuff, and you give me more. And I have some, I get some from my clients as I'm moving along. One of them, I'm a pilot, and one I met in Crestwell flight. He used to, at 16 years old, he flew out of a little airport over in Springfield, Larry Church, and he became an airline pilot, and now he's training people like myself, upgrading us. And also, I worked for an outfit here in Eugene, Siteworks. We dug up a cedar box. It was actually the old water lines. And I don't know if they ever gave you some museum the sample, and or you could always photograph it, I suppose. and and I found out something else from curiosity was the tower at Hayward Field. I thought, wow, who are these people up here? I'd ask people, do you know who that is up there? The college students, that none of them knew. But I found out later there's a little museum underneath the thing about Hayward Field and the whole history of it. I'm not sure if they can change those pictures up there electronically or not. I'm not sure. Interesting though. I just really enjoy hearing about it. I have people ask me, where can we go here in the city? Yeah, we can go to the museum. We can go to your museum. They're looking for something to do while they're here at track meets or whatever. And so I just thank you for your presentations. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Find me after this, because I would love to talk to you more about the Springfield Airport stories. So yes, I think one of the main things that you brought up that we talk about a lot is like how important it is for the community to have curiosity, like that level of curiosity of like what is that weird building, or what is that thing over there? I'm gonna go look for it. And so I think that's one of the things that we work really hard on, sort of seeding that interest and trying to get more. All of you can be community historians. Like, we're deputizing all of you right now. And, you know, it's important to have that and that curiosity.
Yeah. I only a little comment to follow up on that. Just if you're ever in the position to build something, put a date on it. It'll help us out. It'll make people curious like that. It gives you things and it draws people's attention and it helps us out as we figure things out. So yeah,
Randy Prince from Eugene. I am fortunate to live within about a block of the Eugene Masonic Cemetery, and it's very nice to be able to go through there and see photos and read the stories of so many prominent people, the names that are familiar, that's what my school's named for, or that street. And of course, they're mostly men. And it kind of reminds me, I went to a program at the Eugene Library by a Northwest author, Molly Gloss, said that it was actually among farmers in the West, there's a whole like invisible population of single women who came out and settled here, and we hardly heard of them at all. And I'm wondering, when it comes to our regional history, that even though we have heard a lot of women prominent in the first 50, 100 years of European in Portland, and Opal Whiteley's famous in Cottage Grove, but I wonder if are we missing anything in Lane County about the role of women, or was it simply that our area was kind of a man's world?
you're probably going to be able to do better with this having more experience down here. But I can almost guarantee you, yeah, we are missing something. Like I said, we're right now, I know we're sharing like the story and the fight to become, Esther May put in to fight to become the first female sheriff in Lane County. And so we have her materials up and her story up, and we talk about the history of justice in the courthouses. And there are so many women that need more of a highlight. I have worked with a couple of historians and done some tours of cemeteries and things like that. One of the greatest tragedies in history when you're doing research is how many women are referred to simply by their husband's name, wife of Mrs. So-and-so. And it just helps kind of wash them out of history, and it's such a terrible thing. And so, yeah, I am confident we're missing something. I don't have any particularly to share right now, but maybe Maddie does.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. It's difficult. You have to read between the lines a lot of times to find those women's stories, you know, through even like those of us that are like getting paid and have the time to look for those stories. It's difficult. You come across a lot of barriers. And so, again, deputizing all of you to go out there and try and find this information and, you know, be curious at least about trying to figure this out. We have quite a few women in our collection that we've highlighted and, you know, tried to find information about. We have Agnes Stewart, who she came to Springfield with the Lost Wagon Train and became Springfield's first school teacher. And so we were lucky enough that her family later on had collected a lot of archives around the family and around her in particular and donated them to the museum. So they had done a lot of that work on their own and donated those items to the museum so that we could share them with the public. A recent project that we've been working on is we have a huge collection of scrapbooks. So we have probably 150 scrapbooks from the 1850s all the way up to probably, I think our newest one is maybe 20 years old. And scrapbooks are one of those things, sort of like quilting. They are considered women's work. They are considered craft. And so a lot of times they don't get a lot of attention. They're also a nightmare to take care of because they have a lot of what we like to refer to as inherent vice. So inherent vice with an artifact is all of the issues with all the materials that were put together to create it can actually be degrading it day by day. So when you think of a scrapbook, it's flimsy newspaper, super acidic, these acidic scrapbook pages, all the glues and the tapes, and people love to put, we have scrapbooks that have food items in them. We have a scrapbook that has a girl's wisdom teeth that were taken out when she was in high school. So they're collections of all sorts of items, so they're a nightmare to take care of. So a lot of times they get kind of stuck in a box and put away and just, hope that they don't, completely fall apart. We decided, this was after I had some really great conversations with Judith Raskin of the University of Oregon. We were talking about finding women's history in the collection, and we identified the scrapbooks as a place to start. And we had 2 interns from the U of O who were with us for, I think about 6 months. And between them, they digitized. So they went through and photographed each page of, I think they got through 30 scrapbooks. So they photographed each page, and on our catalog, you can basically flip through these scrapbooks, and you can see all of these women's stories. And so these were, especially the early ones, it was very much the world coming through the lens of these women. So we have a couple that are from a woman who was living in Goshen. And so she's clipping things out of magazines. She's finding artwork. She's putting together her own view of the world through these scrapbooks. And it's amazing to get to see her internal life from the, I think the 1880s, 1890s. These are just, it's fascinating ways to be able to find that history. But it took us a long time to get to that point, and a lot of communication and a lot of dialogue and a lot of, again, that curiosity of like, well, we know these stories are missing. What are some ways we can get to them? So that's been one aspect that's been really exciting for us recently.
Thank you.
David Eigel, private citizen, historian warrior. One of my concerns has been the Racing to Change exhibit that was at the Lane County History Museum a few years ago, and because of the mountain of, which I've documented, misinformation. And one of the big sad things was there was a big board up, and all these leading Eugene citizens were allegedly active Klans people, but in point of fact, they weren't. It was just a fraternal order. It had some bad things about it, obviously. And the crooked fraternal order salesmen misrepresented themselves when they came to town, got $10 a head for a year's annual membership. These people quickly found out they'd been ripped off, and they dropped out. So they weren't active Klansmen, even though they're on that list. This includes Shy Huntington's wife, who was the head of the Pioneer Museum for heading up for 20 years. This includes, well, of course, Professor Dunn, but one particularly noteworthy example, which is documented, is the Reverend Frederick Jennings of St. Mary's Episcopal Church. He shows up in history a few years later. This is like 1921 when the list comes from. 1924, he's on the Eugene School Board. The surreptitious Klans people were taking action when it came time to rehire the teachers, they'd have an approval, and all of a sudden the Catholic teachers were not rehired, thanks to their efforts. And it's Jennings who's out as a member of the board. I'm pointing out and I'm letting people know what you're doing, and he's anti-Klan, but he's in the. So my question is, can we do something about this to correct the misinformation that's been given to the community? Thank you.
Yeah, interesting topic there. I love the idea of the Klan as just a fun fraternal organization. Yeah, there's, I think museums have rightfully in some cases and unrightfully in others become kind of a focal point of what we're seeing as kind of the culture wars that are happening in our country right now. And, historically, museums have been a place of not necessarily dialogue that has happened between community members. It's been a lot of, here are the facts, and this is what we're teaching you, and you come in and you learn, and then you leave. And that's not necessarily the story. That's not the true history of these areas. And so we're in need of more dialogue. We're in need of more of that community voice, and we're in need of more of these diverse stories so that we can talk about some of the ugliness from our history and how museums have played parts in that. So museums are, throughout their history, a tool of colonialism. So that's a really big thing. Museums have always been a place to showcase our own histories, but those are all shaped by people. All of our collections we don't go dig them up out of the ground. Well, I mean, sometimes they do, but you're digging certain things out. They don't happen spontaneously. They're created by people talking about what they want to see talked about. So that means that our collections are shaped in different ways over time. And it means, again, like some stories are left out and some stories are, represented in different ways. And, I think it's an ongoing process. Again, I would love to highlight all of the actually really great information that came through Racing to Change and other Black-centered and African-American-centered exhibits and programs that have come through. It was really exciting to see it at LCHM, and it's been really exciting to see the work that the Oregon Black Pioneers have been doing. They have some exhibits out around the country and a lot throughout the state of Oregon. So I would say check them out if you're looking for some more information on Black history in Springfield and Lane County and Eugene in particular. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so broadly, and I'll agree with Maddie, museums haven't always gotten it right, and we do our best to come forward and state that and put it out there, a lot like journalism in a lot of ways. Around this particular topic, I empower everybody to be a historian and do their own kind of looking into it and see how they want to see. But as not being a historian and not being here during that particular exhibit, I default to the people that I consider the experts, the Oregon Black Pioneers, the Oregon Historical Society, the professors of history over at the U of O, who all kind of collectively agree with the interpretation that we had at that time. And that's not to say that it couldn't change down the road, but I looking at the research as it's been presented to me as of right now, there's really not much more that I'm going to be doing with it. I think we were okay with what we put up, and we're gonna just kind of hold on to that. It's no longer there, too, so it's not a huge flashpoint. But I think museums have to be willing to look back occasionally if new things are brought to light that really help change the narrative. History is often thought of as being set in stone, but stone wears down, it falls apart, and then it can be put back together, right? And we can learn new aspects of the story, see new pieces of it. So it's always kind of an interesting balance between what people believe publicly versus what we find, and changing narratives as we move forward.
Hi, my name is Josh Burstein. I've been to both of your museums a number of times, so thank you so much for what you do, what your predecessors have done, and for being here today. My question is based on the first thing that Andrew, when he introduced this panel, asked, which is, how do you tell the story of a place? And I want to ask on a very granular level about the places you work, specifically your buildings. And I wonder if and you said a little bit before on Lane County History Museum side about Pride and the Event Center. You talked about downtown Springfield in your case, Maddie. Can you talk a little bit more about how you intersect with the place you're at? So with downtown Springfield in your case, with the Lane Event Center, and I know a few years ago before you You got here, Keith, that there was talk at one point of potentially moving the Lane County History Museum. But if you could just talk a little bit about the place where you actually are and what how your museum interacts with the area around it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you very much. So I mentioned in my talk, we have been in our location for almost 75 years now, and it's grown and changed a lot, and there's been a lot of different visions for whether it's the right space for us. A lot of that centered around trying to make us more accessible to the public in various ways. We're in a pretty good location, all in all, in terms of traffic. We have we used to be open, and we will again this year be open during the fair, which will be a huge draw for attendance for us, which is great. We're also partnered with the Pride event, and I'm constantly working to get more involved with the event center now that I'm here to make more of that happen. But we're also next to one of the major historic, if not the major historic neighborhood in Eugene. Jefferson Westside is right where we're at. It's our neighborhood. They're working potentially on getting a historic neighborhood designation, which is amazing. They also have an amazing map of all the historic homes in the neighborhood, and we have information and pamphlets on that at the museum. And they're going to start attending. We're going to try to make our space more available to the public, and so we're going to be hosting them this fall for their monthly meetings. And so we're trying to utilize that space and really see a museum. I think we have the folks from Shelton McMurphy Johnson House. They've done a great job of kind of modeling this, looking at how libraries operate as public space. And I really think that that's a future for museums as well. Like, we are here as caretakers of these stories and for the community. And then we should also be that public space for the community and bringing in more programs and partnerships and really highlighting that. Down the road, like I said, the museum right now, we have a lease agreement that we're signing that's in perpetuity for our space. And we hope to be able to keep kind of expanding and growing. If we want to keep growing the collection, we will need more space somewhere. It might be a storage location that we get a nice high-end storage to preserve all of these objects. That'll be a little easier than finding a very good accessible space for new exhibits. But if we can move our storage out of the buildings we're in, then that'll help us add new space for new exhibition work. So, yeah.
Yeah, I talk a lot about our building as our biggest artifact. And depending on the day you catch me, that might be a happy thing. And on other days, it might be an expletive-filled rant, because our building it's from 1911, and it was barely made for humans to be in it. It was a power substation, so it was mostly generators, and then our front gallery space is what was originally the front offices. And so trying to turn that into a space for collections care, interpretation, storage, also working on the collections and being able to digitize things, but then also being able to welcome the public in is kind of a nightmarish game of Tetris sometimes. And but we're always up to the challenge, and it's great. The great things about our building is that we are right on Main Street. We're right at street level. It helps us be even more welcoming in what we're doing. We can utilize our window space. That's where our illumination exhibits tend to be, is on our windows, so that people can see them 24 hours a day. And it's also, it's one of our biggest challenges is how do we interpret this space? How do we care for this space? And one of the things that I've been thinking of more in the last few years is how do we think about what it would mean for us to maybe move into a different space in the future. People are very connected to, the museum, the building is our logo, so people are really connected to that building. But a lot of times that building is such a barrier to things that we want to do. We have a very small allowable footprint. It's a historic building, so there's a lot of things we don't want to do to it. We don't want to add things onto it. We don't want to change the building and its importance to downtown, but we also need to advocate and support the collections and the museum as its own entity as part of the library and part of the city. So we're starting to have conversations about that of, what would it look like for downtown if we were in a different place? What would it look like for downtown if we're celebrating this building still? How are we doing that? So Yeah, depending on the day you catch me, sometimes I'm real happy with our building, sometimes I'm real mad at it. But it is always, it's a huge part of what we do, and it's a huge part of, you know, being in downtown and thinking about our historic downtown and how we are interpreting the space and interpreting the role of the space in that bigger story of downtown.
Thank you both so much. Please join me in thanking our panelists. I'll turn it back over to Thomas for some closing remarks. Thomas.
That's all the time we have for today. Please thank me in joining Keith Losey and Maddie McGraw. This has been our June 13th, 2025 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We'll be off next week to observe Juneteenth, but we'll be back here at Wow Hall on Friday, June 27th at noon for a program on the Oregon Energy Strategy. It'll be a great forum, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you all. Have a great weekend, and see you next time at the City Club.